Active transport is another type of transport. Up until this point, we've required no cellular energy, but now we are going to require cellular energy. In fact, we're going to use this molecule called ATP, which we'll talk about later, which stands for adenosine triphosphate. In active transport, like you'll see here, I have a membrane protein. It's similar to facilitated transport in that we do use a protein, but you'll notice this little addition right here, ATP being turned into ADP. Don't worry about the mechanism for that yet. We'll talk about it when we talk about with the energy chapter of our text. But just understand that right now, this particular protein acts like a pump, just like a pump in a pool. You have one part of the pool where it's going to suck water in, and that allows you to take water into the pump and clean it. And so if we compare that, this would be the intake. And then we have another part of the pool where it's pushed out. Here's the out. And so ATP is what's going to drive that. It's the energy. If you unplug your pool pump, well, your pool pump's not going to run. If you take the ATP away from active transport isn't going to run. Again, cell shape is very important, and so you'll notice that this particular protein changes shape as it functions. This is an example of an ion pump. We see these with calcium, potassium, and sodium, very common inside the cells. They're very important, and they're going to use energy to pump things across a gradient. One of the key things about active transport is that we're going to have things move from low concentrations to high concentrations. And that's important because it's opposite of diffusion. So anytime your cell needs things to move against a concentration gradient, it'll have to use active transport, and it's going to have to use energy. Another form of active transport is bulk transport. And we're not going to get into depth with this in our course, but basically there's two types, endocytosis and exocytosis. But what I want you to know is quite simple. Endo, that prefix should make you think in. That's because in endocytosis, things will move into the cell. Exocytosis, or exo, should make you think maybe exit. And if you go to the exit, you're trying to leave. And so exocytosis is things moving out of the cell. So in general, this is exocytosis we're looking at here. On the right-hand side, what we have is a vesicle which contains something from the cell, and it's going to be pushing it out. That's exocytosis, exit. And if we look on the left-hand side, what we see is this particularly maybe a food molecule. It gets engulfed into the cell membrane, which actually then gets turned into a vesicle. If you remember, vesicles are simply little circular cell membranes inside of the cell. And so this particular mode is endocytosis, whereas the one on the right is exocytosis. If you know that endocytosis is moving things in and exocytosis is moving things out, you're perfectly fine for this course. To sum up, we talked about a couple things. First, we talked about diffusion. That's the movement of substances from a high concentration to a low concentration. Then we talked about osmosis, which is the movement of water from a high concentration of water to a low concentration of water. We used the egg cell for that example. Then we talked about active transport. And in active transport, you have to use energy, and that moves things from low concentrations to high concentrations. All of these mechanisms of cell transport are absolutely critical to your cell's existence. It helps it keep homeostasis, and it helps it actually perform the functions that it does for multicellular organisms. Without cell transport, cells could not exist.